Hi everyone, I hope you're all really well. Today I thought I would do a quick foundation update video because I do really love doing foundation tests and first impressions because I still feel like I'm kind of looking for that perfect ticks every box's foundation, even though I found some that are really impressive and that I really love and would probably fulfill that kind of holy grail criteria. I still can't help myself but just try other stuff that's out there. If you've not seen any of my foundation videos before, I'll put a link below to the playlist and I'll pop a card up here somewhere just so that you can go check them out. The way that I do foundation tests is I like to treat it fairly scientific in so much as I don't like to have too many things in play whilst I'm testing it. So I always use the same moisturiser, I don't use any primer, and I don't use any setting powder, just because I want to see how well the foundation performs on its own. Obviously, after my first impressions, then comes the real fun because I get to really play with it, play with different combinations of moisturiser, of primer, because I have a few, and setting powder, because some foundations I've tried, I've just been put off instantly, whereas with others, I've kind of thought, okay, yeah, it has potential, let's just see what happens if I try other stuff with it. Because of all of that, I thought it would be worth me filming an update video just to let you know how I've been getting on with the foundations that I have tested, and just to give you some kind of more final thoughts, I suppose, really. What I thought I would do is, because I've done quite a few foundations now, I think I'm going to do it every 6 foundations. I'm going to give you a quick update. Let me know in the comments if you think that's a good idea, because I think as useful as first impressions are, sometimes it's once you've tested something in various different ways that it can be really much more helpful to get an opinion on something. I'm also learning that it's quite a cocktail as well in terms of what stuff you've used on your face prior to putting the foundation on, what stuff you've put on after you've put the foundation on, and what type of skin you've got. And I know that sounds really obvious, but actually when you sit down and think about it, particularly if you're using different brands across that whole spectrum, it is kind of asking a lot to expect them to all play together really well. It can really skew results when you're trying these things, because at the end of the day, these products weren't really designed to work together. You can only really assume that a foundation would have been tested amongst products within the same company. So it's definitely something to think about. And I think the extra complicating factor in all of that is if you have oily skin, because obviously that can start to break the product down too. So, oily skin girls, I just feel your pain because it's very difficult to find a good foundation, particularly if you've got stuff to cover up. My ultimate hit list of the perfect foundation would be good coverage, natural looking, lasts all day, doesn't make me oily. I think that covers it. It's not asking a lot, is it? Anyway, let's get into my thoughts on the foundations that I tried way back when. So the first impressions foundation video I did was on Tarte Amazonian Clay, and I was so excited to try this foundation. I think I ended up having about 6 samples of it, which is insane because I probably could have bought a full-size one. But therein lies the problem. I really wanted to get the shade match right. I'm still not 100% sure if I've actually done that. I think I do need to go slightly darker than what I tried in the video. It's very natural looking, it goes on really nicely. It's been a while since I used it, which is really frustrating because now that I have found the most amazing moisturiser, I really want to try Amazonian Clay on top of it. If you don't know which moisturiser I'm talking about, it's the Emma Hardy Protect and Prime. It is amazing. So I may have to get yet another sample. I've never had so many samples of the same thing, but I do really like it, and I've literally scraped out as much as I can from each sample just to make sure. But I think I'll have to go there again just to see what I think. But it's quite a thick foundation, but it does blend really nicely. It's got fairly good coverage, but I don't think it's personally really full coverage. I think it's almost there, but depending on if I'm having a particularly bad day, I do still have to use concealer. If I'm having quite a good day, then I can just about get away with it on its own, so that's really good. Watch out on this one because I really want it to work. I did like that foundation a lot, and I like the fact that it looks very natural and it doesn't look like you're wearing foundation, in my opinion, and I think that is a massive selling point. So I can kind of forgive it for not completely knocking everything out on a coverage point of view, because I have tried some really strongly pigmented things that just knock everything back. But I kind of like the fact that it does that and it makes things look a little bit more natural. So I do like that foundation, but further experimentation is needed. The next foundation I was using was this one from Clinique, and it's their Beyond Perfecting Foundation and Concealer. And it's this funny one with this really odd applicator. And they reckon that one dip like that would be enough for your full face. I still have quite a lot in here. I mean, it's probably down to maybe about here, but I'm already struggling to get the product out, and I think this is probably the biggest negative of this product. Whether I'd feel differently if I had the full version or not, I don't know, because this is just like a deluxe sample size, I suppose, but it has lasted a fairly long time, so it's, you know, it's given me a good chance to test it. I do like it, and I think it's a fairly quick and easy one to use, because you're literally just taking the applicator out, drawing where you want it to go, and then for me the quickest application method in the morning if I'm in a hurry is my Zoevo 104 brush. It does tick boxes in that respect, but for me the biggest drawback is the packaging. I like to be able to squeeze something out or feel like I've got a bit more control over how much product I'm getting out. I think there is a novelty factor to this packaging, and in the end I just ended up using this for concealer. There's nothing really all that wrong with it. I think it has good staying power, it's got pretty good coverage. It is slightly cheaper than your average kind of higher end foundation. For 30ml this will set you back £25, so it's that little bit cheaper. But I think that's possibly because of the design, because you'll never get all of the product out of here, whereas if it was just more of a traditional squeeze bottle or something, you stand a much better chance of getting all of that product out. I'm not sure if I would buy this again, but I certainly didn't hate it. I think it's mainly the applicator which is its biggest downfall. The next foundation that I tried was Too Faced Born This Way, and I have had 3 different colours of this. I originally tried Nude, I think it was, which was actually a little bit dark. I then tried Vanilla, or Custard as I called it, because it was unbelievably yellow, much more yellow than anything I found online about it, any swatches or anything. And then after I did those 2 kind of first impressions videos, I then ordered Porcelain, thinking, well, let's give that one a go. And Porcelain actually wasn't very light at all. You'd be forgiven for thinking Porcelain's actually very pale, but I still found it to run fairly dark, really. I do like it. I think it blends really nicely. The coverage is okay. Again, I wouldn't describe it as being completely full coverage, and on days where I'm having a bit of a bad skin day, then I do definitely need some extra concealer. What I do like about it is, as the name would suggest, Born This Way. I think it's another one that you can almost just about get away with passing it off as your own skin. It's not one of those foundations that, if used with care, will make you look like you've got foundation on, because it does blend really seamlessly, and it just gives that air of kind of, hasn't she got lovely skin? The only thing I would say after experimenting with this one is I did start to look quite shiny after only about 3 or 4 hours. So for those of you that have quite oily skin like me, that's something to consider. I've definitely tried better oil controlling foundations that don't do that after that amount of time, that I actually prefer above and beyond this foundation. So for that reason, I wouldn't get it again, but I think if you had normal skin, it would probably look absolutely amazing, because it does give you that natural but fairly flawless coverage. It's just my oiliness that unfortunately is the bit of an issue there. The next one I tried was a total fail. It was Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk, and this is one of those foundations that I was absolutely desperate to try. Every YouTuber I felt like I'd watched for however long I've been watching beauty YouTube channels raved about it and said how amazing it was. It's expensive, it's luxurious, it's going to be amazing, and I just really wanted a piece of this amazing Giorgio Armani action, and I was so let down. And I don't think it was because my expectations were ridiculously high. In that first impressions video, I put it on and I just remember thinking whilst it was going on, I really hope this improves in a minute because it's feeling horrible. After I did that first impressions video, and if you've watched it, you'll know that I didn't even see out the day wearing it because I hated it that much. I had to wash it off after I think it was only a couple of hours and put, I think it was Amazonian clay on instead, which looked amazing. I just absolutely hated it. I have forced myself to use it another couple of times, which is really hard because when you have that strong a reaction to something, you just want to bury it and forget about it. But I did force myself to wear it. I think it was the following day or within a couple of days of that first impressions video, and I still hated it. I still didn't like it. I just couldn't understand the hype. It didn't blend very well. It just looked nasty. And indeed, it kind of got pushed back and I forgot about it until today, because this is what's on my face right now, and I haven't washed my face, and I have gone out like it, which I didn't even manage the last few times I'd used it. Don't get too excited because I still don't love it. I think for the price tag, it's just not worth it. I think that there are much nicer foundations out there. I think this is one of those ones that you have to have a really particular skin type to get on with it. So it's definitely worth, if you really want to try it, trying to get a sample first. Putting it on top of my moisturiser and primer today, it went on so much better than it had done ever before. But I don't think you should have to spend a ridiculous amount of money on really good skincare and primer or whatever just to make a foundation that's really expensive work. I just think that takes the mick a little bit. In terms of how a foundation should perform, I think it should at least give you a glimmer of hope when you just use your regular moisturiser. And then perhaps when you use it with better quality things, that's when it really knocks your socks off. Well, it's not knocked my socks off. It's impressed me in so much as it wasn't as bad as the first time I'd used it. But it's performed fairly average, to be honest. I think if this was packaged up in a way that I didn't know what it was and someone said, try this and tell me what you think, I would instantly assume that it was a really cheap drugstore foundation, because it just did not do it for me at all. But I think obviously knowing the fact that it is quite an expensive foundation just makes the whole thing a lot worse, really. I've had this on for less than 2 hours and I really scrutinised my face in the mirror before I sat down to film, and already it's kind of settling into pores, which I remember it doing the first time around. I've got a little bit of dryness here and it's not looking nice there too. It's not amazingly obvious that I have foundation, but it's certainly not as nice a finish as a lot of other foundations that I've tried. And I think, and I will correct myself on screen, this is probably the most expensive foundation out of anything that I've tried. So there you go. So yeah, this one does get a thumbs down from me. I will not be trying this again. The next one I tried was Kat Von D Lock-It, and this is a really weird foundation. The first time I used it, I remember thinking, oh, this is a bit thick and difficult to blend, and I really struggled, and I ended up with the most horrendous pore situation across my nose, which you have to check that video out because I do show quite a lot of detail, much to my own personal humiliation, but I felt it was important to share the exact truth of what was going on in that situation because that was what was happening as I was filming. It's the only foundation that I've ever used out of all of these that really did that and really made my pores look really obvious, and I think that's mainly because of the texture of it. It's very high coverage, it's very thick, and it's quite difficult to blend, and if you don't really take your time and really work it into the skin, then it's going to look awful. So it's not ideal for me because I kind of want something that's going to be really quick and easy to apply. That's probably 5 things now out of what I want from a foundation, isn't it? I think it was 4. Quick and easy to apply. Yeah, that's a definite for me. I tried it again yesterday and I was fairly pleasantly surprised. I just used my Zoeva 104 because, like I said, that for me is the quickest way for me to apply makeup, and I just like to be able to dot foundation on and then just kind of go to town and then hope that's it, because I don't like to take too long doing it. And it did actually apply really nicely, whereas when I did my first impressions, I remember definitely preferring the Beauty Blender side So whether that's because I've got this amazing new primer moisturiser, I don't know, probably. Would I get it again? I probably wouldn't, because it still took a little while to really blend into the skin. It is quite a thick one to apply. It does give a pretty good level of coverage to the point that I didn't really need to use that much concealer at all, so that was a win. But again, after maybe 3 or 4 hours, I was starting to get quite shiny. I know that, you know, that's to be expected to a degree, but I have used other foundations, 2 that I can think of, that I can literally go all day and not have that. I know that it's possible. So in terms of Kat Von D, no, I don't think I would get that one again. So the next one I tried, and this is the last one I'll be talking about in this video, is this one from Revlon, and it's their Colour Stay 2-in-1 foundation and concealer. Now, right off the bat, I don't use the concealer anymore. I think it's rubbish. In my first impressions, and even now, I still agree with other people who've said this on YouTube, that the concealer is rubbish. It just doesn't last. It's okay when you put it on, but it doesn't last at all. In terms of the foundation, you can see it's had a fair bit of use, but it does last quite a long time. I used this a couple of days ago because I made sure that I'd reused all of these foundations as much as I could before I filmed this, because I really wanted to give you guys a really good idea of how I was getting on with things. I actually found that this wasn't the quickest to apply because it was giving quite sheer coverage. I was really having to build it up and go over again and again, to the point where I thought, I don't think I can put any more on because I think we're going to have a problem. I think we're going to have like proper nasty foundation face situation. And I don't think my skin has been that bad recently. I had a bit of a breakout going on, but you know, nothing really bad. I think because of the texture of this, even with using my primer and setting powder, I did start to look oily pretty quick. And I think that is just purely because of the nature of the texture of this, because it wasn't really drying down on my skin. It kind of does, but then it didn't seem to last very long like that, and I started to look oily fairly quickly. Maybe that's just my skin type, I don't know. I mean, it's cheap enough to have an experiment with if this is something that appeals to you. It's not my favourite packaging in the world, but then I suppose you have to have fairly low expectations with it being from the drugstore, and it starts to look quite grotty quite quickly. It's not my favourite. I don't reach for this at all now. I had to make sure I used it the other day just so that I could just see how it was I was feeling about it, even with using, you know, all my lovely other stuff underneath and on top of it. It just wasn't that great, so I will probably get through this somehow. One thing I do sometimes use this one for is if I feel like a foundation hasn't given me enough coverage on my chin. It does cover that area quite well. The skin here is quite dry and stressed and stuff. So I find that this goes on that area quite nicely, but I don't think I'd probably want to be putting it on the whole rest of my face. So there we have it, that's all 6 foundations. I hope that this video was helpful to you. I thought it would be worth me just quickly running through the ones that I've tried. If you'd like to see another video like this in future, I think I'm currently up to testing 3 new foundations, so I would be testing another 3 and then do an update video. Let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd like to see, because I think it probably is quite helpful to see something like this. I like to know of the people that I watch foundation test videos on, what their further thoughts are, whether that be in an empties video or best and worst of beauty or whatever. But this one, I just purely wanted to concentrate on talking about just foundation. It's one of the things that I test quite regularly. So that's it from me today. I hope you're all really well, and I will see you again soon. Bye! I'm a bit of a control freak. I like to know what I'm getting, and I just like the idea of being able to dip in and out as and when there's stuff there that I like, and I've made some great discoveries using this service. So